Roll call for Legislative Day 29, Tuesday, February 21st. Anderson? Here. Baldwin? Here. Barlow? Brightman? Here. Boner? Here. Bouchard? Here. Brennan? Here. Case? Cooper? Here. Dockstetter? Here. Ellis? French? Here. Furphy? Here. Maru? Here. Hicks? Here. Hutchings? Ide? Jones? Yeah. Kinski? Here. Kolb? Present. Landon? Here. Larson? Here. McEwen? Here. Nethercott? Here. Case? Present. Pappas? Here. Rothfuss? Here. Salazar? Here. Schuler? Here. Scott? Here. Steinmetz? Here. Hutchings? Excuse me.
Excused.
Excused.
Ide excused.
Ide excused. President Driscoll?
Here.
Mr. President, 29 present, 2 excused.
Thank you. Chaplain today is Pastor Jake Merriman, Cheyenne Evangelical Free Church. Do our prayer today.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Please join me in prayer. God, you are Lord of heaven and earth. You made the world and everything in it. You give to all humankind life and breath and everything. You have established every nation that lives on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of our dwelling place, that we should seek you and find you. Yet you are actually not far from each one of us, for in you we live and move and have our being. There is no authority except from you, and those that exist have been instituted by you. And so we thank you, Lord, for the establishment of this nation. We thank you for the establishment of the state of Wyoming and for your countless blessings to us in this place. We thank you for the beauty of your creation on display here and for the vast resources that you have blessed us with. I thank you for each one of the members here in this chamber. I lift them up to you, and I ask that you would grant them wisdom from above, wisdom to discern what your will is, wisdom to know how best to legislate, to be good stewards of all that you have entrusted to us for this time in this place, and wisdom to discuss, debate, and deliberate and decide in a manner that is pleasing to you. As you granted to King Solomon so long ago a wise and discerning mind to be able to govern well, so grant those good gifts to the members of this body, that your goodness would be experienced by the people of Wyoming through the duties carried out here. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Senator Furphy, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Reading, correction, and approval of the journal.
Mr. President, your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of February 17, 2023 has been read and recommends it be approved. Senator Larson, Chairman.
You've heard it. Are there any objections? Being none, journal's adopted. We have a doctor of the day, Kim Westbrook, MD from Laramie, Wyoming. Come on out, Kim. Welcome. Thank you. Today in Wyoming history, this is tax day, folks, and nobody really knows it's a different legislature. In 1903, Governor DeForest Richards approved an act to tax gifts, legacies, and inheritances. They also passed a 2 cent and a half cent gasoline tax. So it was pretty significant in the time, and it was also, today is the day they did a military funeral for Chief Washke. So kind of interesting that Washke's one of our neat guys, and he actually did a military funeral. So we have Consul General Sylvian Faby from Canada. Is he here? He's not here yet. What? He's in the house. We'll get him when he comes over here. So signing of enrolled acts. Leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality. Warren Bennis. Friday is the last day for bills to be reported out of committee in the second house. And by the way, Senator Barlow, we need to have you lead us. This would be Senator Landon's birthday today. Here we go. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Yeah! Any words? You better go to the mic.
Mr. President, I don't know how you found that out, but thank you. I'm just glad to make another one. And for many years, I've gotten to celebrate it right here, which is a great honor and a great privilege. So thank you all, senators, for the birthday wishes. Really appreciate it, Mr. President. Thank you.
Senator Cooper, did you have something you wanted to say?
Privilege of the floor, Mr. President.
Brandon.
I don't know if there's any Wyoming Cowgirl basketball fans in here, but we performed a little bit of magic on Saturday night. In the second half, the Cowgirls scored 50 points. They shot 80% from the field and were 12 for 12 on free throws. Our Wyoming Cowgirls, Allison Furtick from Glendale, scored 20 points. And my personal hero, Tommy Olson from Orland, had 12 points. These girls just knocked them dead. They knocked it out of the park. So I was really proud of the Cowgirls.
All right. Mayor Poppins.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to go back to Senator Landon's birthday. I was hoping that I could get in there. Senator Landon, stand up. Okay, I don't know if it's going to work, but maybe if we pinch to grow an inch. So we're going to see if that works.
Could you run back and pinch another cot as well? With that order of business, signing of enrolled acts. Senate Enrolled Act number 38, originally Senate File 43.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 38, being original Senate File 43, EMS districts, an act relating to improvement and service districts.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 38, originally being Senate File 43. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act number 39, originally Senate File 10. Book.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 39, being original Senate File 10, Licensed Professional Council Compact, an act relating to professions and occupations.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 39, originally Senate File 10. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act number 40, originally Senate File number 37.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 40, being original Senate File 37, Podiatry Medical Services, Medicaid, an act relating to Medical Assistance and Services Act.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 40, originally Senate File number 37. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act number 41, originally Senate File 29.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 41, being original Senate File 29, Brucellosis Management Updates, an act relating to agriculture, livestock, and other animals.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 41, originally Senate File 29. I have so signed. Messages from the House.
From the House of Representatives, February 17, 2023, message number 381. Mr. President, the following bills passed the House on third reading by the votes indicated. Senate File number 29, Brucellosis Management Updates, ayes 61, excused 1. Message number 382, House Bill 7, Underage Marriage Amendments, ayes 40, noes 21, excused 1. Message number 383, House Bill number 96, Transfer on Death Deed Insurance Coverage, ayes 61, excused 1. Message number 384. Mr. President, the House adopted Joint Conference Committee number 1 report on House Bill 104, Hunting of Predatory Animals Amendments. Ayes 57, noes 4, excused 1. Signed, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
No concurrences this morning, or do we have one? We do have. Senator Boner, if you're ready on the Joint Conference Committee number 310 report referencing House Bill 104, we'll have it read in.
Joint Conference Committee Report number 1, referencing Senate Message number 310, House Bill 104, Hunting of Predatory Animals Amendments, signed by Representatives Harrelson, Craigo, and Newsom, Senators Boner and Schuler.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of Joint Conference Committee Report number 1 to House Bill 104 and ask that you vote aye. Ladies and gentlemen, the House did not concur, or the chamber down the hall did not concur on our amendments for a technical reason. The Standing Committee deleted requiring rulemaking out of page 1, line 5. They wanted that put back in because there is in fact rulemaking. So nothing that will affect what goes into the Green Books at all, but kind of a technical correction on their part. And that's all that that's the only reason we didn't get concurrence, and we fixed that. No material effect on the policy objective here. So I ask that you vote aye.
Question being called. Motion is the Senate do adopt Joint Conference Committee Report number 310 to House Bill 104 and vote aye. Chief Clerk will please call the roll.
Joint Conference Committee Report number 1, roll call, House Bill 104. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? No. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Joint Conference Committee Report number 1 for House Bill 104, 27 aye, 4 no.
By your vote, you have adopted the Joint Conference Committee Report 310 on House Bill 104. Reports from standing committees. No standing committee reports. Bills on second reading. House Bill 67, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 67, special license plate decals, women veterans.
House Bill 67 having been read two separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. House Bill 81, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 81, hospital supplemental payments, statutory fix.
House Bill 81 having been read two separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 188, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 188, engrossed, wolf depredation compensation.
House Bill 188 having been read two separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 195, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 195, engrossed, American Rescue Plan Act appropriations amendments.
There are amendments. Could we have the amendments read in, please?
House Bill 195, second reading amendment number 1 to engrossed copy, section 400, section 401, page 4, line 33, under.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 195 and ask for your favorable consideration. Members of the Senate, what this does is go out and it deletes a section on page 24, line 6 through 18, and it deletes that section. And we had a discussion on this when we worked the appropriations bill. And so when you see these type of footnotes and expenditures in any spending bill, just keep in mind that these are created for number one as a way to try to navigate part of the constitutional prohibition against writing special legislation. Well, when you look at the language in this is so narrowly focused. It's really only designed for one or maybe two projects in the state of Wyoming. So what it effectively does is it precludes any of your communities from participating in this program, which is these local government programs that this appropriation goes for. So this deletes that section on page 24 with that footnote. It gets rid of the appropriation. And Mr. Chairman, what it does is then it takes that appropriation and rolls it back into those local community projects that every one of your communities is then available to participate in if they've got a local project. So we're taking a piece of pork and we're going to spit it out here in the Senate. It's got trichinosis on it. And for those of you that are old enough to know what trichinosis is, it's poison. And we're going to put it back in to where we have that local government fund, and that basically allows everybody, every local government in the state of Wyoming to participate equally to submit projects for these funds. So, Mr. Chairman, that's what the amendment does. Let's stand for any questions.
Questions? Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President. So my query is, and maybe it's quite obvious to others, but we're decreasing by 9 in one place and increasing by 6. Maybe there's 3 that went somewhere else and I don't see it in the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Scott.
Mr. President, technical correction. Trichinosis is an infectious disease. It is a dangerous one we just don't hear of anymore, but it's there.
Senator Hicks.
So, Mr. Chairman, in answer to my colleague from Campbell's County, the Senate Standing Committee amendment that was adopted to this already reduced that appropriation by $3 million. So this just reduces it by an additional 6 million. So the total 9 million is now going to go into those local government projects. But that's the answer to the question, and that's why you see the differential there.
Further discussion? Seeing none. We're voting on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 195. It involves money. It'll be a roll call vote. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
House Bill 195, second reading amendment number 1, roll call. Anderson? No. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Whitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Murphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Kolb? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. On the amendment, 28 aye, 3 no.
By your vote, you have adopted second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 195. Reading clerk, read in the next amendment, please.
House Bill 195, second reading amendment number 2 to engrossed copy, page 27, lines 7 through 23.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I move second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 195 and would ask for your favorable considerations. Members of the Senate, this goes into on page 27, and it strikes the language completely from line 7 through 23, which is section 5, Mr. Chairman. So the basic effect of the amendment is it deletes everything in section 5, and then it just renumbers it. So let's talk about what section 5 does. This brings in language that just says if there's any unexpended funds of the ARPA funds, that they would go towards the what we call the Goshen Tunnel Project with the collapse of Tunnels 1 over there and then the rehabilitation of those 2 tunnels. Mr. Chairman, the simple fact is all of the ARPA funds are fully appropriated. There's not going to be any reversions. If there is, they will probably stay in those programs. This is an unnecessary section in the bill, given the fact that this bill fully appropriates all of the ARPA funds available. So stand for any questions, Mr. President.
Further discussion? Senator Rothfuss, you want to come?
Mr. President.
Thank you. And I guess the explanation's good enough, but I don't see why we don't take reversions and put them towards something. It goes back to what we've done with general fund is if there is a reversion, why would we not take it even if it's fully allocated? I think there will be reversions, but why would we not put them towards it? We've done this all the way across the board with these ARPA funds is wherever we could, we've displaced general funds, Mr. Chairman. Why would we not continue to do that if it's available? If it's not, it doesn't matter. It's a moot point. But in the areas where we can, I think this is a good one. It sucks up a whole bunch of it. These are easily available. I guess I question why we would not want to leave this in here and take it even if it's a portion of it. So I'll stand for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Further discussion before the sponsor rises. Senator Nethercott, to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is money now available in ARPA based on actions of the other body. About 9.9 million available now, just for a point of clarification on that piece. That just happened, and so the senator from Bags was not incorrect, that originally the ARPA bill as presented to you was fully appropriated. But as of now, there are monies available in ARPA. And so I do think that is important for the body to be aware of. I would say that this amendment is confusing to me because it is reversions associated if some of these ARPA projects or ARPA funds aren't utilized in the appropriate time, would go into a water project. And so I do know that my colleague here to the left of me was standing to rise and certainly looking forward to that conversation. Because obviously, as the body knows, what's been kind of uncomfortable about this conversation and this amendment from both chambers and from my perspective, this obviously relates very directly to certain legislators, legislative districts, and so, which is fine, and we all have those. Those are why we're here. But just more conversation about that to understand what's really happening or what the concerns are, because I don't understand it.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, first off, Mr. President, one of my concerns is that we're obligating monies to, if there are reversions, which is a big question mark, to something that hasn't been approved by the Treasury Department as an approved use of these funds. So we've never established that we can even use ARPA dollars on this project. So I would hate to see us rob other projects, maybe something else that is actually eligible could use reversions, should there be any, rather than a project that we don't even have Treasury guidance on to say, yes, this is eligible. So that's another concern. I think it's, we've already appropriated the money. It's there, it's in the water development account. It would be great if there was some kind of reversion, but I think this just confuses the matter. So on and for the amendment.
Other discussion, Senator Nethercott, for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. President. And again, I still struggle. And again, I support my fellow senators here, but you know, we did appropriate out of this body, Senate File 82, $9.9 million of ARPA funds for water projects, which is why that money is now available back in ARPA. And it wasn't because there's a lack of Treasury guidance. As we know, infrastructure projects and certainly water development projects is a part of that. And I think a significant amount of ARPA dollars has gone down that direction. So as you consider what to do with an additional $9.9 million of ARPA funds, I think that that might be an appropriate usage of them. So just consider that. I'm, you know, voted up, voted down. I'm neither for or against the amendment, but just for a point of conversation, I appreciate the comments from my colleague from Goshen.
Senator Kinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. My notes reflect that this is one that in the Appropriations Committee, your Senate Appropriations lost on a 7-5 vote. And we stood at that time united in favor of not having this in there for some of the reasons that have already been stated. The uncertainty as to whether the federal government will even recognize this as a valid use of ARPA funding. That's still very much up in the air. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Landon.
Okay, well, Mr. President, thank you. I appreciate the conversation. I'm struggling to catch up as well. It just seems to me as though, knowing as we do that we've got a project over in the eastern part of the state that's going to cost us money coming up, and probably lots of it, it just seems to me as though the only downside to keeping this in the bill would be, well, we discover that maybe we can't use it. Then next session, we'll all be back together, and we can decide at that point what we want to do with that $9 million, or whatever comes back. I guess I'm struggling to find the downside of keeping something in here that we know we're going to face getting arms around in the future. So That's my question. What exactly is the downside? I don't think that's confusing at all. It's gonna be there if it can't be used, and if it can be used, let's get going. We know we've got a big project over there on the eastern front. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further comments? Senator Hicks, your second time.
For my second time, Mr. Chairman, so let me see if I can help with this. I think my colleague already alluded to the fact it's highly unlikely that this is even eligible. So the funding that we funded through water projects are specifically for municipal projects, and that's under the ARPA guidance. That's for water and sewer, and those are municipalities. So the idea that we're going to take a federal facility and then turn around and use this for irrigation, at least the preliminary guidance that we've got is that it's highly improbable that it's going to be eligible for ARPA. So that's one issue. The other issue, this project's already fully funded. So the idea that we know we're going to have to fund this, there's already an appropriation in the budget last year that funds it, and that's where that number comes from of the $21.8 million. And so the idea is number one, it's highly likely not eligible for ARPA. So even if there is reversions, it wouldn't go to this project. Number two, the project's already funded. We did that last year in the budget. That's the $21.8 million that's already obligated at this project. So this just creates an accounting nightmare, assuming that we pass this and assuming that even if there was partial, because we know at the maximum amount right now, there's roughly $9 million of ARPA. Maybe that's going to be $17 million of ARPA or $12 million. We don't know what that number. Maybe it's still not enough to fully fund the project. So then you create a situation where you got federal ARPA dollars that are matching obligations through account one and LSR obligations that starts to create this accounting nightmare, assuming that it was even eligible. So the idea here is that the project's fully funded already in the budget. We could apply any reversions to any other water and sewer projects. Keep in mind, we had over $200 million in requests from municipalities for water and sewer projects. Why would we not use reversions for that, where we know we have a deficiency, versus allocating funds for a project that's already fully funded last year in the budget? Mr. Chairman, it's just not necessary in this bill. I hope that answers the questions.
He's spoken twice.
Twice.
Here. What? Sorry. It's the way rules of the game. Voting on second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 195 involves an appropriation. Roll call, please.
Roll call on second reading amendment number 2. Anderson? No. Baldwin? No. Barlow? No. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks?
Aye.
Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski?
Aye.
Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Baldwin? No to aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Second reading amendment number 2, 24 aye, 7 no.
By your vote, second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 195 has passed the Senate. Next amendment.
House Bill 195, second reading amendment number 3 to engrossed copy, section 400, section 401, delete.
Senator Larson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move second reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 195 and ask for your favorable consideration. This amendment will bring some dollars to some very important areas in my community, specifically senior citizen centers, and also to long-term care facilities in other parts of the state. There are currently 4 projects that we know of, and there may be others that are shovel-ready. And these projects were considered with our State Lands Board in December on funding. I think these are vitally important, and I want to send that message to our State Lands Board. Anyway, in the amendment, on page 4, it increases the other funds for Health and Human Services capital construction by $6 million. It deletes or it takes away $11 million out of OSLI expenditures that are general expenditures on page 9, line 20. And then on page 11, line 19, it specifically states these $17 million going to provide grants for senior centers and long-term care facilities. I think these are projects that are vital to many of our elderly, obviously in our communities, and will provide, specifically on the project I'm thinking of, it helps deliver meals to seniors that are at home during these COVID outbreaks. Obviously, we're past this one, but who knows if we'll get another one. Also, it would provide a bigger area for this old facility that's in my community. And I know I'm not probably supposed to say that sort of stuff. I think there's other communities that have the same issues, that their buildings are very old. Their heating and cooling and air systems aren't adequate. So I would ask for your favorable consideration on this and see if there's any discussion.
Senator Roth.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I do have a question about the source of the funds are basically general grant funds to OSLI, as I understand it. My question would be, would these uses be within the scope of what OSLI could already approve, which I would suspect would be yes. In other words, I think there's broad enough authority through the OSLI grant program that they could approve additions or augmentations to a senior center as a competitive project under that general granting authority, but I might be incorrect. So my question then is, could it already be done through the existing OSLI funds? And if not, are there any other funds or granting programs under our current ARPA legislation that could be used to request funds for this purpose?
Senator Kinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. I must admit I'm a bit torn on this because my community too has some senior center projects that went in and were not funded. And it's my understanding that at least in part it was due to the fact that there's some uncertainty as to whether they qualify for ARPA. You know, we do our best to sort of bootstrap ourselves into, you know, related to COVID as best we can. I think our project went in talking about social distancing and so forth. And as I understand it, the board is concerned that there's a risk that these may be determined ultimately not to be eligible, in which case we've got to pay it back. But this is a pool that my community would be applying to. Having said that, this money is coming out of the water and sewer fund, that we just bumped up by $6 million. And we absolutely know that water and sewer is positively allowable under ARPA. So on balance, I guess I'm gonna have to come down on the no side on this, but it's a tough call. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I stand in full support of this. As mentioned, the senior center in my neck of the woods, Senator Larson's neck of the wood. You know, I've been in that a number of times. I think the building was built in the 30s by an oil outfit, I believe. And then the senior center took it over in the early 50s, possibly. I don't have those dates firmly down, but anyway, the total cost of the building up there is $6,320,000. They would need at least $4 million out of this fund. They've raised over $1 million so far in the community. And there's a couple others that indicated they support them. The market value of their current building is $420,000 and $20,000 in equipment. The offer of the gifted land, there's from Rocky Mountain Manor, expires June 30th of this year. So Rocky Mountain Manor is an assisted living facility in the center of town, and they've given a chunk of their land for this project. It's not, it's not handicap accessible. It's terrible if you get in there and you're handicapped, you're not gonna go to the bathroom. There's no way, it's kind of a jog thing. The building's in pretty tough shape, so I hope you will see the need for this and support this. Thank you.
Doc Slater.
Thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate the discussion. What I'm hearing then is we've got something very specific in mind for this. We had a facility in the first round of requests, and it got bumped down on the priority list because it was just that, a senior center. And our situation is not old and outdated. It's just simply, we can't fit the people in anymore. We're borrowing a town hall conference room. We're borrowing a town council chambers. We're doing everything just trying to fit the people in. It's time to grow. We put one on the list, and it was rejected because a lot of the same similar situations from my colleague up towards the north that these funds may not qualify, but we were kind of backburnered on the whole situation and didn't get support. So maybe some thoughts to that too. Thank you.
Other discussion. Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, so looking through the amendment, a question I have of the sponsors is, I see that we increased, excuse me, Mr. President. So I see we increased from 85 million in the bill itself to 125 million for capital construction projects. Was there any thoughts, again, just going in there and footnoting that additional appropriation and highlighting, you know, that for those additional funds that were already appropriated in there, that we would want to provide a footnote to say these should go to the top of the priority list. In other words, with SLIB's ranking thing, that these type of priorities, assuming that they're eligible for ARPA funding, would move to the top of that priority list. And so that would be one question, Mr. Chairman. And just for clarification, what we did with the first standing committee amendment, we moved that money into local government support projects. And this is another area that I must say, so that 6 million that we moved with the first amendment, move that into local government support projects. So that didn't go directly into the water and sewer. I think there's another amendment that looks at that. But was there any thought of actually footnoting those local government projects and saying that we give a priority towards these senior facilities? So it looks to me like there's two opportunities where we can highlight that and bring that up, so long as they meet eligibility with just a footnote in either both of those projects, because we've increased the budget for both of those. So any thoughts on doing that, Mr. President?
Senator Larson for your second time.
Mr. President, thanks for the questions and the discussion. I think that putting that in there specifically as a line item D on page 11 is actually trying to move that up higher in the ranking and send the message that this is very important to the legislature, and it is to me. I guess, and I think OSLI probably could already, in the dollars they have, they probably could already fund this, but I think with this amendment, it sends that message that this is important. I do think that these facilities are compliant. I read through the 400 pages trying to figure out if it specifically says senior centers. It does not. But it does say that there can be other projects if you can, if the recipient can explain how their expenditure will address public health or negative economic impacts of the public emergency. And I think these facilities meet both of those criteria. I mean, who else needs help during these times more than the seniors that maybe can't get around? Maybe they need help getting on a bus and taking places. My facility's having a difficult time with even keeping their buses going just because they're trying to repair the building and stuff. Like the senator from my area had stated, the building's very, very old. It has not worked for them, especially during COVID, because the people were afraid to go there because they didn't have enough room in their eating area. They weren't able to use all the different levels of floors because they were too confined in their small offices. I mean, they deal quite often with giving the shots and that, having the medical people come there and discuss this sort of stuff. But I think they meet the criteria if they can explain it. So ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. We're voting on second reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 195. It involves money. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Second reading amendment number 3, roll call. Anderson? No. Baldwin? No. Barlow? Aye. Whitman? No. Boner? No. Bouchard? No. Brennan? No. Case? Aye. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? No. Ellis? No. French? Aye. Murphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? No. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? No. Jones? No. Kinski? No. Cole? No. Landon? No. Larson? Aye. McEwen? No. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Steinmetz? No. President Driscoll?
No.
No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Second reading amendment number 3, 5 aye, 26 no.
By your vote, second reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 195 has failed to pass the Senate. Clerk, read the amendment in, please.
House Bill 195, second reading amendment number 4 to engrossed copy, section 400, page 5, line 2 under.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move second reading amendment number 4 to House Bill 195 and ask for your favorable consideration. Mr. President, if you recall, we had a previous bill we discussed the water and sewer projects on in this body earlier this session, and we had appropriated $39.3 million for the additional water and sewer projects for local governments. These are your municipalities across the state, and if you recall, Mr. President, we had a long sheet of paper, it was blue and white, and it told you all of the projects that had put applications in for these projects. And what we were trying to do is get us a little farther down that list of applications that have been applied and approved by the Office of State Land and Investments. We felt it was a very appropriate use of those funds and a very fair use of those funds because it was spread out across the entire state of Wyoming. The work had already been done. The agency had agreed to just review those applications and make sure everything was up to date. No circumstances on the ground had changed to where they would still need the full amount of the money that was awarded. This just restores that funding because of some actions the other body took. And so that's basically the gist of the amendment. It would allow for another $39.3 million, adding an additional $9.3 million to this bill on page 5, line 2. That's the gist of this amendment, and I'd stand for any questions.
Questions, Senator Landon?
Mr. President, just a quick question. I'm trying to determine and struggling to get there where this money comes from. What line item from are we increasing to? I get the argument for water and sewer lines. I'm just trying to figure out where the 9.3 came from. Thank you.
Further questions? Further questions for your second time?
Thank you, Mr. President. It's money that was freed up from another bill that didn't make it. That's where it's anticipated to come from. Our good Laramie County Senator pointed that out to us earlier on in the discussion of this bill. I hope that answers questions, and if we have any more, I'd be glad to visit with you offline. Thank you, Mr. President.
Question being called. We're voting on second reading amendment number 4 to House Bill 195. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Second reading amendment number 4, roll call. Anderson? Aye. Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? No. Whitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? No. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Dockstader? Aye. Ellis? No. French? No. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? No. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Scott? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Ellis, no to aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Second reading amendment number 4, 26 aye, 5 no.
By your vote, second reading amendment number 4 to House Bill 195 has passed the Senate. We're back on the bill. Senator Jones.
Mr. President, privilege of the floor.
Let's vote and we'll do it afterwards. Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're back on the bill. Just for point of clarification, good senators, it appears now, based on the number of amendments, that this bill is again fully appropriated. If I'm mistaken on that, look forward to hearing from any corrections, but just for a point of clarification for the senators as we go into third reading, understanding the appropriations available for ARPA funds. As of now, based on our actions today, it is again fully appropriated.
Thank you. Further questions? House Bill 195 had been heard 2 separate times. Question is, shall the bill be heard a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. House Bill 284, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 284, Collection Agency Regulation, Debt Buyers.
House Bill 284 having been read 2 separate times. Question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, so ordered. Senator Jones.
Thank you. Privilege of the floor.
Granted.
I'd like to welcome Devin Brubaker, who is our airport guru, and also members from the Wyoming Airports Coalition.
Hey, Devin.
Senator Landon.
I have privilege of the floor.
Granted.
You know, when those gentlemen stood up upstairs, Mr. President, one of those was our airport manager, Glenn Januska. So I'm happy to recognize him, and I hope you'll give him a hand additionally to what we just did.
Here, here. Okay. Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't need privilege of the floor, I don't think, but I would like to ask that House Bill 74 be referred to appropriations. There is an appropriation in it.
Without objection, so ordered. Okay. Great honor, we're joined today by Consul General Sylvian Fabi of Canada. As Canada's Consul General in the U.S. Mountain West region, Mr. Fabi oversees a team of 17 people who work in the 5 Mountain West states to strengthen regional trade and economic ties with Canada. Please help me in welcoming General Fabi to the Senate. Great friend of Wyoming.
Good to see you again.
Okay. Thank you,
Always
Mr.
great
President.
friends with Canada.
Distinguished senators of the Wyoming legislature, thank you so much for carving out a couple of minutes out of your busy schedule to allow me to address you. It's a great honor, and I feel it's also a great privilege to be here to speak with you today. Let me just start by saying that no two nations depend more on each other for their mutual prosperity and security than the United States and Canada. We're bound together, as you know, not just by our geography and history, but also by our values, our dedication to promoting freedom, opportunity, and an unshakable belief in the dignity of self-determination. Over the past century, together, we built the North American economy and security apparatus into what I believe is the envy of the world. And even as new threats have emerged, we have showcased that we stand steadfast together in the face of threat to either nations. Canada is very proud to count the United States as our number one partner, friend, and ally. Canada boasts a pretty strong relationship with all of the 50 states of the Union, and of course, Wyoming is no exception to that. Canada is the state's most important export market. In 2021, we bought about $350 million US dollars in goods and services from Wyoming, and it's a big increase of more than 70 million since the last time I spoke to you 2 years ago. So at least it's going in the right direction. It's always a little bit of concern when it goes the other way around. So, and of course, that's not including the direct investment that Canadian companies have in Wyoming. We have about almost 50 companies that we know of that are Canadian-owned, that have open operations and created jobs for hundreds of Wyomingites. In terms of overall two-way trade, the Canada-Wyoming relationship amounts to more than $1.5 billion in goods alone. But as I hinted a moment ago, these numbers do not reflect the true depth and importance of this relationship, especially as we look ahead to an uncertain global future. Events of the past year, and you know which ones I'm talking about, have made it painfully clear that economic integration alone will not be enough to ensure that all nations behave in good faith towards one another. And because of this, it's increasingly important that we look to our partners and our friends as we work to solve the problems of the next century, which will be many. As you'll be aware, NORAD stands as the cornerstone of Canada's defense relationship with the United States, headquartered not too far from here in Colorado Springs. And we look forward to marking the 65th anniversary of NORAD this year, of our binational command later this year. And I say binational command because it is the only binational command in the world. There are no others. It's not an alliance like NATO. It's a binational command. So we protect our North American territory together. Canada and the US, of course, are both Arctic nations. And where I'm from and where you're from, we're not in the Arctic, but sometimes it certainly feels like it. We cooperate on Arctic issues, but also on security, climate and environment, and infrastructure development up in the north. And Canada and the US are both quite important mining hubs. And I believe the people of Wyoming know about mining, probably more than others. And you know about the strategic importance of it. In fact, next week, I'll be participating in a roundtable on critical minerals hosted by our friends at the Canadian American Business Council. And I'm told that we're going to have some Wyoming experts that are going to come down to have these important conversations. The US and Canada both share an interest in improving critical mineral security and ensuring the future competitiveness of our country's mineral industries. And it's truer now than it's ever been. And through the Canada-US Action Plan on Critical Minerals Collaboration, we're advancing our mutual interests in securing the supply chains for the critical minerals needed for our important manufacturing sector, including communications technology, aerospace and defense, as well as clean technology. And sometimes we forget about it. We are also a breadbasket to the world, and the rich farmland that stretches along that long and big continent might very well be one of North America's greatest geopolitical strengths. And together, we protect our watersheds and fields and forests to ensure their health, not just for this generation, but of course, for those yet to come. But I'm not here today to make any specific ask or request of you. I'm just here today to underline and reaffirm the bonds of friendship and partnership that exists between our two countries, which of course includes your great state. And I want to be active in letting Wyoming know that Canada is your trusted friend, as you believe you are ours. But in the spirit of this friendship, I hope to be able this summer to come to Cheyenne Frontier Days. The first year I was here, it didn't happen because of you know what. The second year I had to be in Canada for some sort of what I was told very important meeting, and I will stop now commenting about that, but this year I've planned around it. So I'll be here, and I hope that, I don't hope, I know I'll enjoy myself, but I'll be looking forward to see as many of you as I can. And I want to end by saying that every time you have a question, a complaint, a concern, an idea about Canada, we, the Consulate General, we're based in Denver, because we have to be based somewhere, are your one-stop shop. Anything you want to talk about Canada, express concerns or ideas, we're there. And some of your colleagues are using us, so you should do the same if you ever need to do it. So I'll end now, and I will say again, thank you so very much for allowing me to talk to you and to come and bring the best wishes from my country and our desire to continue to work with you. So thank you so very much, all of you.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much.
Huge thanks for joining us today. Appreciate all the work you go to cultivate our friendships. We look forward for Wyoming and Canada to continue increased trade and friendly relationships. We had a great relationship. Look forward to it in the future. Thank you. Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I have privilege of the floor?
Granted.
I want to introduce today a new resident to Wyoming in Casper that's sitting up in the stands here. He's pulled his family out of Scottsdale, Arizona. They're under construction on a precious metals mint that they purchased the old newspaper on the river up in Casper, and it's actually going to be into a lot better use now. And he came here to testify on behalf of my bill. It got pushed back till Thursday, but I want to introduce a real entrepreneur from Casper, Josh Fair.
Hey, Josh, welcome. Love you. Did you bring any sample coins for us? We're ready. Senator Ellis. Bills on third reading and final passage. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, do we have a consent list?
Mr. President, we do have a consent list, and I move House Bill 42, off-road recreational vehicle operation, House Bill 56, Purple Star Schools, House Bill 62, open banking, House Bill 83, tribal agreements to hunt and fish, House Bill 100, acquisition value study, House Bill 134, alcohol sales to licensees, House Bill 148, airport liquor license amendments, and Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, House Bill 279, voter identification requirements.
Would anyone like any of these removed? Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like House Bill 83 removed from the consent list.
That's a surprise.
House Bill
Dockstader.
I'd like House Bill 62, open banking, removed from the consent list.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none. Have been read three separate times. The question is, shall these bills pass the Senate? House Bill 42, off-road recreational vehicle operation. House Bill 56, Purple Star Schools. House Bill 100, acquisition value study. House Bill 134, alcohol sales to licensees. House Bill 148, airport liquor license amendment. And House Bill 279, voter identification requirements. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
On the consent list, Anderson. Baldwin. Barlow. Beitman. Boner. Bouchard. Brennan. Case. Cooper. Dockstader. Ellis. French. Murphy. Guru. Hicks. Hutchings. Ide. Jones. Kinsky. Cole. Landon. Larson. McEwen. Nethercott. Pappas. Rothfuss. Salazar. Schuler. Scott. Steinmetz. President Driscoll.
Aye.
On the consent list, 31 aye. House Bill 42, are there any changes? Hicks? No. Hicks, aye to no. Steinmetz? Aye to no. Ide? Aye to no. Case? Aye to no. Hutchings, aye to no. French? Aye to no. Salazar, no. McEwen? Aye to no. Nethercott, aye to no.
Driscoll, aye to no.
Driscoll, aye to no. Murphy, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 42, 20 aye, 11 no. House Bill 56, are there any changes? Case, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 56, 30 aye, 1 no. House Bill 100, are there any changes? Case, I to no. Barlow, I to no. Landon, I to no. Rothfuss, I to no. Anderson, I to no. Guru, I to no. Boner, I to no. Jones, I to no. Cole, I to no. Schuler, I to no. Ellis, no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 100, 20 aye, 11 no. House Bill 134, are there any changes? Case, I to conflict.
Driscoll conflict.
Driscoll, conflict. McEwen, conflict. Guru, conflict. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 134, 27 aye, 4 conflict. House Bill 148, are there any changes? Case, I to conflict. Bouchard, I to no. Guru, I to conflict. McEwen, conflict. Hutchings, I to no.
Driscoll conflict.
Driscoll, conflict. Beitman, I to no. Steinmetz, I to no. Brennan, I to no. Salazar, I to no. Ide, I to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 148, 20 aye, 7 no, 4 conflict. And House Bill 279, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 279, 31 aye.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members elected to the Senate, House Bill 42, off-road recreational vehicle operation, House Bill 56, Purple Star Schools, House Bill 100, acquisition value study, House Bill 134, alcohol sales to licensees, House Bill 148, airport liquor licenses amendment, and House Bill 279, voter identification requirements, have passed the Senate. Bills on third reading. House Bill 62, third reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 62, Open Banking, sponsored by the Minerals Committee, an act related to banking.
Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Long weekend allows us a little more time to visit with important people, like our bankers. And that's led me to the conclusion to bring this off and give it some more consideration. Mr. President, we already have a national organization that's in a comment period on this. National Open Access Regulatory Framework. They're already working on this. There's also some problems that they're concerned about the lack of resources and added demand put on a certain division that deals with all the banking in the state. Are we extending a need for more human resources, extending capacity of government? Ultimately, Mr. President, this bill will require a lot more time and effort than those who oversee our banks. Require them to have a lot more time and effort and will become, then essentially it could even become meaningless as the national organization overrides whatever Wyoming does Because eventually they are the people who would oversee this and make a decision on it. It just doesn't make sense after we take a deeper dive into this and look a little closer, that we cause these kind of problems in our banking industry around the state. What we're doing here, folks, is simply wasting time and resources when we could be having a federal agency already take care of taking the comment and receiving the comment on it, because it's much bigger than the state of Wyoming. So stand opposed to the bill, Mr. President.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, appreciate the concerns that have been raised, and Mr. President, it's regrettable that we didn't have the opportunity to have a good, robust debate on this committee of the whole. I think a lot of the concerns came late, and as a result, we didn't really have the robust debate that we could have had we heard some of these concerns from the banking committee around the state earlier. Mr. President, I will say a couple of things. First of all, the intent here, as you recall from the bill, is to provide a substantial amount of opportunity with 2 years' time to really review open banking and to put in place a regulatory structure that protects our citizens, consumer protection. I do understand that the banks are used to doing as they're told by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is a federal entity under the Federal Reserve. So let's pause and reflect on that for a moment. The Federal Reserve is the entity that oversees the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And the suggestion of some of our bankers, not all of our bankers, some of our bankers is, let's wait until they tell us how to regulate this in a few years, even though we've been waiting 10 years so far for the opportunity afforded to us to be regulated by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau in this space. Mr. President, that does seem antithetical to how we usually like to do things, where we tend to look to our state authority and states' rights to do things the right way, the Wyoming way, instead of waiting for the feds to tell us how to do it, what to do, and when to do it. Now, Mr. President, that's not to say that we don't have the opportunity to look to the federal guidance and look for best practices and incorporate them into the rulemaking that we'll put forward with. So there are a couple of, I think, areas where there's a little bit of misinformation here. One is the idea that this opens doors to potential fraud. Mr. President, it's quite the contrary. Those doors are open now. The intent here is to provide a regulatory structure that requires express written consent, which is the highest standard available for consumer protection, put that in place as a foundation and protect our consumers. That is not in place at this point in time. It is not even intended to be in place, Mr. President, and the only pushback we heard from an international trade organization that provided testimony was, well, that's hard. I don't think we really want express written consent because that would slow the consumers down. Mr. President, it's exactly what we want, is that consumer protection in place. And it actually heartens me, Mr. President, to know that there are trade groups at the national level that are concerned by us putting in place express written consent. Probably tells us we're going in the right direction for the consumer protection. This legislation affords the Division of Banking the opportunity to put in place protections over a 2-year period of time so we can come back, revisit it in the next legislative session, review what rules are moving forward, course direct, and then put in place the best-in-class consumer privacy protections and other consumer protections to protect this nascent industry and to allow Wyoming to lead in this space. So, Madam Chairman, I do understand the concerns. The concerns are the reason this bill was brought through the Blockchain Committee and then the Minerals Committee, to provide the protections for the people of Wyoming that are absent now in an emerging space. And when we see fraud, we see concerns, we see all of those types of things unfolding nationally, We want to protect our people here in the state. Without this, Madam Chairman, we simply wait for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, I'll say it again, a division of the Federal Reserve, to look out for our best interests. I'm still waiting for that to happen, Madam Chairman. On and for the bill.
Thank you, Senator Rothfuss. We'll do President Driscoll.
Madam Chairman, thank you. Encourage all of you to pull your bill out and let's read and talk about what it really does. So when you go back to it, we talked about not doing committee of the whole. Folks, what this bill really does, if you look at the very deal, talks about data, things can happen. Express written consent means a customer's affirmative written response to a clear and conspicuous notice regarding the collection, use, or disclosure of customer data for purpose of open banking. They only do it if they want it. If you don't want it, you don't have to. So you can continue banking the same way you've done forever. It's fine. Madam Chairman, you can keep banking the way you have. When you go into it, on line 20, with Romanette a bank may participate in open banking. Doesn't say they have to. We're not forcing any bank to do anything in the state of Wyoming. It says they may do it. And it's very clear. It's what this does is set up a sideboard should a bank choose to, and should you decide to sign a waiver that you allow it to be disclosed. This is what we rail at the federal government nonstop, Madam Chairman, about they step in and tell us what to do. And here we are in Wyoming. We're saying, let us have the ability to have our own control over our own data and be able to have it released if we want to. Let our banks do something differently. And we're saying, no, we trust the feds. We'd like the feds to continue to tell us what to do. So which way do we want it? Do we want the feds telling us what to do? Or do we want to have choice for ourselves? Because that's really what this does. It doesn't force anybody into anything. On and for the bill, there's black helicopters all over about this bill, about what it's going to do. You only put your head in the noose if you want to stick it in there. If you don't want it in there, you can continue to bank the same way you are ad infinitum. It's fine. But for some of us, maybe we can get a better service, or one of our banks can find a different avenue that actually gives them an advantage over a bank in an adjoining state or another bank down the street. Let's give our people the choices. Let's give our banks the choices. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cooper, then Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We spent a lot of fascinating hours in the interim on this subject with some really interesting people. And we were really actually able to stay awake through a lot of it. It was pretty tough testimony. But we went through basically every objection that we've heard to this bill in the interim, and we discussed it. We talked about the sideboards that are necessary, and we really worked this bill from one end to the other. I think what we came forward with was a good, solid solution to an issue that is going to be shoved off in the hands of the Federal Reserve if we don't do something. We're in a position to put forward the rules that will put us in the forefront of where we really need to be in this industry. As we've seen other issues like this come forward, such as the fracking rules, we built our own. The government came and adopted ours. I think there's a really good chance that could happen here, because we've got some really good rules here. We've put a lot of thought into this. It's a good, solid bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be on and against the bill. I was against it back on Minerals Committee during the interim. Just think this, although this bill looks different than what it was, I think, presented long ago, but the idea is still the same, and open banking, in my opinion, is still a bad idea, and it's bad for consumers, and here's why. Your data is very important for your privacy, and this is data mining on steroids. The argument that you have express written consent, I like that factor, yes, but what if, and you see this with ESG,
What if all the banks require you to sign it or you don't bank with them? Then what are you gonna do? You're basically forced into signing over your data in order to have a bank. Because if all the banks get together and decide they want to do open banking, and oh, here, part of your agreement is you've got to sign this waiver in order to do banking with us. You see that collusion happening with ESG. I can see this collusion happening with open banking, because open banking allows those people that want to do social credit scoring systems. This gives them the data to build the social credit score system. All your gun purchases, your ammo purchases, how much you spend on gasoline, all your credit card transactions goes to a third party for them to aggregate all your data, and then they can tell you what your carbon footprint is. They can tell you, oh, this person's big into guns. This is a bad bill. I'm going to vote against it.
We'll do Senator Furphy, then and then President Driscoll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Once again, let me explain this open banking. Open banking is now in our banking system. We already have it, but as I've said previously, the consumer can opt in to allow their financial information to be shared. Now, why would you want to do that? If you want other banks to compete for your business. But otherwise, your financial information is secured. And I got like the 100 emails all of you got. People don't understand what we're doing here. We're not opening their financial information up to any institution. What we're trying to do is further secure their data in our state. Now, the question came up, well, our state bank commissioner doesn't really have time to deal with this. Quite honestly, I spoke with him, and he's pretty excited about establishing these rules. I said, well, what about people? Do you have enough people to do this? He said, absolutely. I don't need to hire anyone else to pull this off. And he's pretty excited about making us one of the first in the country to establish these rules. And so he's looking forward to it. So I think what we're proposing here is very safe for our consumers. And I think it, once again, makes our state leaders. We had talked to my compatriot senator. We had talked to our national senator, and she was very excited about us leading again on this concept. But once again, it's already out there. Banks already have it. We're not doing anything new to risk our consumers. Thank you, Madam Chair.
President Driscoll, then Senator Ide.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Are all you for giving me rights or taking them away from me? Because what this bill does is gives me a right. It gives me the ability to have control of my own destiny. So for all of you out here, Madam Chairman, do you want to take my rights away? Do I have the right to make a decision for myself? This is what we're talking about here. This is what we talked about, the black helicopters, the feds are going to come in. If the feds are going to come in, they overrule our rules already. It doesn't matter what statute we pass, Madam Chairman. When the feds come, they come, and they'll overrule us. And if that's what they're going to do, if you're going to run into something they're going to force us into, believe me, it won't come from Wyoming. It will come from the feds down. But for me, if I want that choice, why would you deny that to me? Why would you deny it to a bank of mine that wants to create a competitive advantage? Might be a little bank in a town like I live in that's a little small one, and they're trying to find a toehold to compete with other banks. and they say, I want to be a specialty bank. I want to do this. And are you guys going to look our businesses in the eye and say, no, I'm going to deny that to you, even though all the safeguards are in place? Are we for freedom? Are we for business? Or do you want to just say, no, I want to rule from the top. I'm going to tell you whether you can disclose that information or not. This is really what we're down to, and I find it really curious that this state, who's one of the, number one, we're a freedom state. And we're looking at guys like me and saying, no, you don't have freedom. We're not going to give you, we don't trust you to allow your own data to be released. Folks, I think I can make a decision. When I get that credit card deal that I signed that's 30 pages long, what do you think you're doing? You're giving up a whole bunch of rights and you chose to do it. This bill allows me to have a right to do what I want to do. Please tell me you're not taking that away from me. Thank you.
Senator Ide.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Those were good comments from both of my colleagues, one from Sheridan and the good president from Kirk County made a convincing argument there, and I like the words of freedom and liberty. That's why I'm here. But I'm afraid there's an ulterior motive here that I just don't understand, and that's where I'm struggling with this. I like the thoughts of the bill and the intents of the bill, but this is from an international banking magazine, and they openly admit that, this is a quote from the article, it says, open banking enables banks to understand the carbon footprint of their individual and business customers, and in turn, to better understand the climate liability on the bank's books. So with that, I'm on and against this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
There's another thought.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think that the good senator just relayed what the former banker told you, which is that the banks already have this information. This bill is not allowing for more. It is restricting the usage of that data. It is a protective measure. It does the exact opposite of what the senator's concerns are of providing protections. The banks already have the information, right? As our former banker in this chamber has told you. Thus, they can determine your carbon footprint. Process that. You already surrendered that data to the banks. It's done. They got it. They know how often you're filling your vehicle up with gas. As if there aren't 1,000 other ways to figure that out. Nonetheless, so that ship sailed. The bill is intending to do the opposite of all of your fears. That's it. It's that simple. All of the fears you've identified are valid. I don't like it either. I'm a big right to privacy gal. So if you are that, you want to vote aye on the bill.
Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. President. So on and against the bill. Let's look at the bill. It says express written consent. You know where that ends up? It ends up on the bottom of the contract when you go in to sign it up for an account. And it's part of that big thing that you didn't read when you signed up for that account. The bill says a bank participating in and providing for open banking shall comply with all applicable state and federal laws. How does that give me any protection? The feds say do it, let's do it. That doesn't sound good to me. The commissioner shall adopt rules consistent with all applicable state and federal laws. Again, show me the protections. You know what, this open banking thing, it's all about selling you more. You know, the way they sell it to you is when you go up to the counter and they say, would you like to look at our new program? And most of us say, no, I'm just here to make a deposit. That's where we do business with our banks. This is a whole new way of doing business where they take your data and they put it out on the open market and sell, and they get money to bring those vendors in. This is all about money, man. Follow the money. Follow where this is really going. This is about open data is what this is about. And if you didn't know what was going on and you signed on, oh yeah, I want to open a bank account here, and you didn't read that contract, your data's out there. What do you do once it's out there? What do you do when you close the account? Your data's already out there. Show me in this bill where this bill talks about any of that. Mr. President, I respectfully disagree. This bill does a lot more than we think it does. And we should, if we're gonna make, this isn't ready for prime time. Let's come back with another bill that has actual protections in it. Then maybe I'll vote yes. On and against the bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and for the bill. I just want to draw the Senate's attention to the effective dates, and this is what made it make sense to me. Throughout the session, we've been seeing a lot more of these goofy, in my view, goofy, effective dates, effective immediately, then the rulemaking happens. And to me, we just need clear effective dates, July 1st, 2023. That's when most of our bills should take effect. But if you look at the effective date, this is important. Usually they should be pretty standardized, but here, because of the momentum happening at the federal level, the whole goal of this is to authorize our banking folks to be engaged in writing the rules, so that as this is happening at the federal level, we have people here in Wyoming actively working on addressing those very privacy concerns, which are important to us, important to me, so that they have to react to us. So this has this delayed effect of taking effect July 1st, 2024, but it authorizes our banking folks to start writing the rules now. That's the intent of this, and that makes a lot of sense to me. So I just wanted to draw the body's attention to the fact that we can adjust this bill in the future, but the key component of it is to make sure that Wyoming is involved with the rulemaking so that the feds have to react to us and our desires, so that we don't have open banking coming into Wyoming as the federal government wants it to. We have a say in it. So on and for this bill, let's be leaders in this space and let's protect our privacy.
Further discussion. Ready for the question. Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good discussion. So we must have had some waivers on the use of proper names, so I'll go ahead and use them as well. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, they're already in a comment period on this. Why do we need to do it? So when the Consumer Federal Protection Bureau issues the rule, it will be best practice, in essence, the law of the land. And Wyoming's rules will have no meaning. And the Division of Banking, I can use that name too, I've heard that already today. We're getting a double message there. Do they have it? Do they have the number of people they need to take care of this? The answer I have here is no. Short, this bill will require a lot of time and effort from that division, and the effort will become meaningless. And Mr. President, I'm excited to see the newfound interest in states' rights from our community just over the hill, on and against the bill.
Favor the question. Senator Roth, this is your second time.
Thank you, Mr. President, for my second time. I appreciate the robust debate. And my first takeaway from all of it is that everyone here is literally exactly on the same page, which is incredible. Everyone here, everyone in the Senate wants robust privacy protections and consumer protections for the people of Wyoming when it comes to banking. And that is great. That is the spirit in which this particular bill comes to the chamber. And again, Mr. President, the select committee during the interim took a tremendous amount of testimony on how other countries and how other jurisdictions around the world were engaged in open banking, and ended up very concerned. Getting to the good senator from Natrona County's concerns, certain European jurisdictions require open banking. It's not opt-in, opt-out, it's required. So you are subject to open banking and subject to third party information. So when we contemplate the ESG standards that were suggested, those were exactly the concerns that led to the select committee bringing something which requires express written consent and requires methodical investigation and a deep look, Mr. President, at rules and regulations that are being promulgated with a 2-year lead time so that we can ensure those protections are in place. Mr. President, I'll harken back to another piece of legislation that required express written consent, and where the language was taken from was the Genetic Information Privacy Act that we passed a number of years ago and then we strengthened over the last couple of years, which is the gold standard in the country. The state of Wyoming has the strongest genetic information privacy protections in the country that came from the same select committee with the same intent and the same type of work going into it. Mr. President, I'm asking the chamber to give your select committee, to give the Division of Banking the opportunity during this next interim to continue this work, to work through the rule promulgation process, to develop additional legislation for the next legislative meeting, and then to aspire towards that 24 timeline, and not to simply surrender to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Again, it's not in our best interest. Every concern that was laid out is going to be realized if we remain passive and leave it up to the feds. Every concern will be realized. And I share every one of those concerns on and for the bill.
Read the question. House Bill 62, open banking, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk will call the roll.
House Bill 62, third reading, roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? No. Barlow? Aye. Whitman? No. Boner? No. Bouchard? No. Brennan? No. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? No. Ellis? Aye. French? No. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? Aye. Kinski? No. Kolb? No. Landon? Aye. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? No. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? No. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 62, 16 aye, 15 no.
House Bill 62, open banking, having received the affirmative vote of the majority members elected to the Senate, House Bill 62 has passed the Senate. House Bill 83, third reading of the House bill. Senator Hicks.
I have privilege of the floor.
You may.
So, Mr. President, I just want to provide notice to all of my colleagues out here, and particularly the ones that like to fly black helicopters, whether they're manned or unmanned. This is my airspace. And there's no trespassing with black helicopters in my airspace because I do reserve the right to shoot them down once they enter in here. So just as notice, Mr. President, keep the black helicopters or they'll get shot down. Thank you.
Want me to send some rubber bands and paper clips back to you?
I've got a little more high-powered equipment than that,
Okay,
Mr.
just
President.
check it. I hate to see you damage the exterior here. House Bill 83, third reading of the House bill.
House Bill 83, Tribal Agreements to Hunt and Fish, sponsored by Representative Larson, an act relating to game and fish.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and against this bill. I rise today to let you know that I've actually requested that my name be removed as a sponsor. And I've never done that. I've introduced lots of pieces of legislation over the years, and they get amended. Sometimes they turn out to be things that aren't my preferred alternative, but that's the process, and I respect that. But this is unlike other pieces of legislation we bring for consideration. This is a very delicate matter representing an agreement between two sovereigns. At the outset of this session,
there had been support from one of our tribes about the bill. In that vein, working with the other sponsors, there was no discussion of offering amendments or working it, because in my view, it represented what two entities had agreed upon, most notably our tribal neighbors. However, things have changed since then. There is no longer an agreement. Our tribes and tribal members have reached out to their tribal council asking them to put the brakes on this. And so, listening to their constituents, one of our tribal councils who supported this bill has now revoked their support, and they no longer represent or support it. This bill is just not ready for prime time. We have other opportunities in the future to maybe come together to put forth a better work product, but as it stands right now, we're missing a key player that would make this bill work. So I'm just asking you, and again, just wanted to disclose, I'm taking my name and Vast LSO on the process for doing that, because this is a unique bill. There's no harm in waiting for a future day to come up with a better agreement or a different agreement that maybe represents how we could actually move forward. But right now, I don't see how passing this bill advances our goal of working with our tribal partners. So I'd ask for you to vote no again on this bill.
The comment, Senator Case.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too have asked for my name to be removed from this bill. You know, it started out in a really good place in our Tribal Relations Committee meeting, where some citizens from my district and members of one of the great tribes on the Wind River Indian Reservation, we talked about this court case and the implications of it and what it might mean down the road, and if we could work that out. And we had a great brainstorming session where we could talk about, you know, maybe we could allow for off-reservation hunting. We need to respect the resource. We need to respect seasons on both sides and try to align those so that we don't have groups of people hunting in the field at different times. You know, we kind of coordinate take and coordinate protection of the resource. It was a great brainstorming session. I was really encouraged by that. And I had high hopes for this bill too. But when you stand back and you read this language, and you read this language of a member of a sovereign tribe that predates the state of Wyoming, that has historical ties here for thousands of years, and you read this prescriptive language, you can see why they're upset. And I mentioned last week that the largest protest being held, I think, on Friday, was at Fort Washakie, Wyoming, and that is a true fact. And I heard about it at church this weekend. People are very upset, and I just think that has poisoned the well. I also have great respect for the members of the business councils of both tribes. The most senior member and the chairman of one of those business councils personally asked me not to support this bill. I respect that. I respect him. And my name will not show up in the digest and future about this bill. And I appreciate the sentiment about it. I think there's a hope that, well, it's just a tool. Maybe it'll have some use down the road. I hope that bears fruit, but I don't believe it will, and I think it's counterproductive. I'll be voting no.
Good question. Ready for the question. House Bill 83, tribal agreements to hunt and fish, having been read 3 separate times. The question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk will call the roll.
House Bill 83, third reading, roll call. Anderson? No. Baldwin? No. Barlow? No. Beitman? No. Boner? No. Bouchard? No. Brennan? No. Case? No. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? No. Ellis? No. French? Aye. Furphy? No. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? No. Ide? Aye. Jones? No. Kinski? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? No. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Steinmetz? No. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 83, 8 aye, 23 no.
House Bill 83, tribal agreements to hunt and fish, having failed to receive the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate. House Bill 83 has failed to pass the Senate. House Bill 229, second reading of the House Bill. Third reading of the House Bill, excuse me.
House Bill 229 engrossed, electronic payment of sales and use taxes, sponsored by Representative Larson, an act relating to sales and use taxes.
There's an amendment. Can we have the amendment read in, please?
House Bill 229, third reading amendment to number 1 to engrossed copy, page 4, line 5, in.
Senator Cole.
Mr. President, I move to withdraw Senate third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 229.
Without objection, so ordered. Have another amendment. Do we have it read in, please?
House Bill 229.
Senator Case.
I'm sorry, but the good senator made a motion, and maybe we have to act on motions. He did move it. And so he could withdraw the motion, though, and do a request.
Senator Cole.
I withdraw the motion.
I would request to withdraw the motion.
I would request that you withdraw the motion.
Without objection. Thank you. Thank you, Senator Case.
File third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 229.
Thank you. We get it right that time?
Yep.
Absent objection, thank you. Appreciate the help, team. All in good humor. Next amendment, please.
House Bill 229, third reading amendment number 2 to engrossed copy, page 4, line 5, in.
Senator Cole.
Explain what the amendment does. It allows up to, expressly stated, up to a 3% cost. So if the cost is less than 3%, that's what they would need to charge the cost. That's really all this amendment does.
Further discussion. Since we're ready for the question, we're voting on third reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 229. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Third reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 229. Roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Garoop? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Kolb? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Second reading amendment number 2, 31 aye.
By your vote, third reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 229 has passed the Senate. We are back on the bill. Ready for the question. House Bill 229, electronic payment of sales and use taxes, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? The Chief Clerk will call the roll.
House Bill 229, third reading roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? I. Dockstetter. I. Ellis. I. French. I. Furphy. I. Guru. I. Hicks. I. Hutchings. I. Ide. I. Jones. I. Kinsky. I. Kolb. I. Landon. I. Larson. I. McEwen. I. Nethercott. I. Pappas. I. Rothfuss. I. Salazar. I. Schuler. I. Scott. I. Steinmetz. I. President Driscoll.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 229, 31I.
House Bill 229, electronic payment of sales and use taxes, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members elect the Senate. House Bill 229 has passed the Senate. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, I move the Senate stand in recess until 2 p.m.
Any announcements?
Mr. President,
Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
your conference committee on House Bill 219, which is made up of myself, Senator Steinmetz, and Barlow, will be meeting with our House conferees upon noon recess in room 113.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, will meet upon adjournment today in Capitol Extension Room W4 and online to consider House Bill 199, license plate decal breast cancer awareness, House Bill 2, County Officer Salary Waiver, and House Bill 286 ETS consolidation.
Chairman Kinsey.
Your Appropriations Committee number 2 will meet today at 12:30 in room E301 to hear HB 64 Legislative Stabilization Reserve Account Obligations and the re-referral of HB 99 Property Tax Refund Program.
Mayor Baldwin.
Mr. President, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, will meet tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. in Capitol Extension Room 6 and online to hear House Bill 4, Medicaid 12-month postpartum coverage.
Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Committee Number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources. We're making a change from our usual Thursday morning meeting to Wednesday after adjournment to hear House Bill 200, non-resident hunting licenses application fees. So that'll be tomorrow at adjournment. Thank you.
Senator Landon.
Mr. President, your Judiciary Committee, Committee 1, will meet tomorrow morning at 8:30. Note the time, committee, 8:30 in the morning. We'll look in on House Bill 128, voyeurism within enclosed spaces. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Biden.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 3, Revenue, will meet today in about, let's do it, 20 minutes at 12:20 in Capitol Extension Room W6 and online to take up the following 2 bills: House Bill 98 in gross property tax homeowners exemption, and House Bill 124 electricity generation taxation. And then tomorrow, we typically meet Tuesdays and Thursdays, but tomorrow, Wednesday, February 22nd, upon noon recess, we will meet to take up our last bill, House Bill 121 in gross property tax deferral program amendments.
Thank you, Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The Conference Committee on House Bill 114, which is civil case filing amendments, will meet at 12:30 today in W113. That's Case, Brennan, and Cole.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, will meet today upon adjournment in Capitol Room 2 and online to consider the following bills: House Bill 17, State Lands Grazing of Non-Owned Livestock, and House Bill 11, State Park Rangers Retirement. Thank you.
Chairman Kinsky.
Just a reminder, folks, if you have not yet signed the photograph that's on the front table, like I haven't, just a reminder to get that done sooner rather than later. Thank you, Mr. President.
Perfect, thank you. Heard the motion, all in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Senate will stand adjourned till 2 p.m.